Thank you, everyone, for coming back this evening and for our wonderful health and wellness event. I have with us another tremendous speaker. Her name is Jennifer Radney, and we are going to be talking about natural childbirth tonight with Jennifer. And she is a doula. She's been involved in the natural childbirth industry for over 6 years. She owns a company called Birth of the Goddess, and she is very passionate about what she's doing. And I'm very excited to have her on today on this topic of natural childbirth. So we were talking just a few minutes ago, and Jennifer said that there's many different options that families can choose in terms of natural childbirth. So we're going to start with that, just talking about some of what those options are and what kind of the advantages and disadvantages are there. Okay, so Jennifer, take it away. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me on here. So I am a holistic doula, and a doula is basically essentially a birth coach. We do a lot of educating throughout your pregnancy, and we help educate you with the goal of empowering you to make your own decisions so you can be informed and advocate for yourself, and help you choose your birth team, educate you on your birth options, and then ultimately we support you physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally through that birth process. And I'm also postpartum doula and a lactation consultant. So I really feel the importance of mothering the mother and being that role model, and that families don't have to and shouldn't have this experience on their own.
Right, exactly. And it's so much more fun when the family is involved too.
Yes.
Yeah, all 4 of our children were natural childbirth, and even that was back in 1972, January 1973. When they're just starting to do Lamaze classes, and our first Lamaze class started 1 week after Kyle was born.
No.
He was 6 weeks early.
They come when they come.
Yeah, they come when they come. So I had no training, but I was listed to be there with my wife, and so the hospital didn't know that I had no training. But it worked out just fine.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
It always does. We say that our birth plan is really our birth preferences, and
Right.
it's more the act of researching and educating yourself to get to the point of knowing what you want so you can kind of advocate for yourself and your partner, and whoever's there can help advocate for you, but it's not set in stone. Births are going to happen the way that they're going to happen.
Right.
And really keeping that in mind, the goal for me personally is to have a really positive birth experience. So it's, there are a lot of birth options right now. We have the option of a hospital birth or a home birth or even a birth center. And there's everything from, midwives to OBs, doulas, and all of that can make up your birth team. But it's really up to you to decide what kind of experience you want for yourself. A lot of times families, especially at the beginning, there are a lot of fears because fears are really based on the unknown. So especially if it's your first child, everything's overwhelming and unknowing. And I always say that, God's source created us so perfectly because we have 9 months to ease into it. And with each trimester, there's really different focuses. And there's plenty of time to get ready and to educate ourselves and decide what it is that you're looking for as to what type of experience you want.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like just now they have the water tub.
Yes.
Which I wish they would have had when our 4 kids were born, because that seems to be very, very pleasant for both the mother and the baby. I would think for the baby as well.
If you're a water person, then it can be really easing. And, there's something that happens when we're in labor, And it's really like an outer body experience. They say that women leave their bodies spiritually to go collect the souls of their children and bring them back to this world. And there's this different state of consciousness that we go through at different phases of our birth experience and labor. And that really eases. There's a lot of practices. There's hypnobirthing and self-guided meditations and breathing exercises, and not just the hardcore physical aspect, but ways to kind of get us out of the physical body and try to just breathe with ease and allow everything to open. And water is one of those really wonderful tools, whether it be in the birth tub and you actually give birth in the water, or just use it as a birth tool. Throughout labor, you can take a shower, you can get in the bath. At home, most families do love setting up when they have a home birth, having that option of having that birth tub and really creating that sacred environment. But that's also possible to have a natural childbirth and create that sacred environment, whether it be in a birth center or whether it be in the hospital. And my goal is really to create that sacred environment and allow the mother to go to that other place and really be maternal led, that it's very intuitive. And that's where, we're not focusing on our birth preferences in the moment. We're just allowing it to happen. As you said, it can happen a month early, it can happen weeks later, but it's really trying to trust this birth experience and trust our bodies that we're so capable to create life. We don't need someone to intervene and tell us how to and when to. Now, there are situations where it is really important to be in a hospital. There could be complications. I've even had, home births where we've had to transfer afterwards. But even that doesn't mean that there's that stigma that it's going to be a negative birth experience or a traumatic birth experience. I think all of those elements really have to do with mind over matter and really knowing and your expectations and having that right support team around you so that no matter what happens, you're still birthing with ease and making choices for yourself, and it's still a positive experience.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's important for the mother especially to know that if something does go wrong, there's a backup plan.
Yes.
I was just thinking we had 4 and then 7 grandkids. So out of 11 natural births, there was only one where we did have to go to the hospital because little Rio, our youngest one, he had to be turned.
Yes.
So and we had plenty of time. The doula we were there. We all set up in the water, literally in the water. And the doula was there and everything. And she said, you know what, you're going to have to go to Iowa City and go to the hospital and we'll set it all up and get you going. And we did. I drove her up there and we all went up together, all 4 of us, and they had no problem, all 4 of us being in the room while he was born. Like you're saying, they were really cool. The lady doctor was awesome. And he came out and he's a wonderful, healthy child. So that's all these things can happen. You're absolutely right.
No, exactly. I have actually today's this baby's 2nd birthday, and it was really beautiful because I received like the most beautiful text this morning with this mom saying, thank you so much again for the most beautiful, positive birth experience. But that happened to be that she had to have a repeat C-section. She was hoping, and we were planning for a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after C-section. And lo and behold, last minute, like you said, the baby turned and the baby was lying in the wrong position. And, she couldn't have that trial of labor. But it, like she said, it was such a beautiful, positive birth experience. We were prepared for all of the different options. And she had a gentle cesarean, and I was in the room with her. And we had already discussed what were the elements of what were really important to her. So there's a lot about the golden hour that's really sacred and beautiful as well. So in those instances that we might diverge from our birth plan, we always know and trust that there's so many different stages of that birth process that we can get back on track and really fulfill the family's wishes. So skin to skin contact, breastfeeding within that first hour, delayed cord clamping, all of these practices that are more natural and holistic that you might want can still be possible, even if it winds up, being what you hadn't wanted initially, to really still facilitate a beautiful, positive birth experience.
Exactly. I think if nobody gets anything out of this session other than the fact that it's not dangerous to do this.
No,
And
exactly.
that's what, people would always, the critics would always say, oh, you're better off just doing traditional childbirth, go to the doctor, just depend on the doctor to do everything, and don't participate because, you're taking, you're being dangerous about the whole situation. You're taking risks. And that's just not true. It's not true.
No, it's not true. Right now, society really tells us that birth is something that we need to be fearful of.
Yeah.
And again, that portrait of birth as out of control and painful is really not what we want to be
right.
telling families.
Right.
We want to be showing them and empowering them that just like your body takes care of everything perfectly, and afterwards, you lactate, trust that process.
Mm-hmm.
We also see that when that fear gets instilled and we hand over that power to the doctor and we start those cascades of interventions, that's really when it's not maternal led and it's really like practitioner led. That's what we're seeing really leads to a more traumatic birth, and one intervention of being induced leads to a whole cascade of other interventions and really increases those chances of having a cesarean. So I really try to explain all of that to my families. So, and then coach them and prepare them.
Right.
I also teach prenatal yoga, and I do a lot of talking and coaching. And there's the elements of coming together in community for these women to share their experiences, and then really getting in tune with your body. So we're not calling someone else and saying, am I in labor? What's going on with my body? But really dropping into, easing into that first stage of labor, even before it's truly active labor and your water's broken and we're counting contractions, to really tap into what's going on within you. And that's really when we call it a much more empowered birth experience, because you're knowing and you're trusting what's going on and you're not asking somebody else.
Right. Yeah. It's just so much more, it's deeper for everybody involved.
It is. That's really why I got into it. I had my children, my oldest is 23. So 24 years ago, I was young and I had no family. And I intuitively sought out a midwife. And even though I had my children in the hospital, I had them with midwives. And it was really, for me at that time, the best of both worlds, because I got a lot of prenatal care, a lot of prenatal education, and I was really, really physically and mentally and spiritually taken care of. And it really was this outer body experience. And I didn't talk to other people about it. And when I did, and when we would come together and we would talk about our birth experiences, I wasn't matching up with my beautiful, positive outer body, spiritually awakening, experience. So I kind of was silent about it, but always sought out what exactly happened. What was it about my experience that was so different from so many other women that I speak to who just had like this traditional hospital medicated doctor-led experience, and they weren't feeling that beautiful, empowered, romantic even experience. And I have to say, my second one, I also didn't know what it was. I later, when I became a birth worker and started more education, it was an orgasmic birth. It was the most amazing feeling and experience. And it was very spiritual again. And then my third, just by chance, long story short, because you don't need to know the details, but I wound up having an epidural, but I delivered her myself. And it was still a really, really beautiful, empowering experience. And I think that later on, because it was, my births were such a source of who I was as a person and what I was capable of creating and facilitating, that was my source of power. You know, kids get hard. I almost don't want to tell my families that childbirth is sometimes the easiest and babies are sometimes easier. Like, wait until they're teenagers.
Yeah.
But that was really my internal source of strength. And that's what really led me to seeking out later when my kids were teenagers. And I really felt passionate about supporting other families and how can I give back to my community and make an impact on future generations. It was, to me, really important to support mothers so that they really tap into their inner wisdom and they tap into that inner strength inside of them, because we really see that as a reflection of who you become as a mother as well. Really tapping into your own intuition instead of asking somebody else what's best for my child. So when we do have a more natural mother-led birth experience, I really see how that reflects the breastfeeding process and all the questions that we might get, much lower cases of postpartum depression, because you really feel like you can stand in your power and trust your body and trust your own intuition.
It's what could be more powerful and more deeper than creating new life?
Yes.
You're literally at that point the creator, you know, and it's you couldn't have a deeper, more spiritual experience. So obviously you want to be as connected to that experience as you possibly can. You don't want
to your body, connected to your baby. You know,
right.
that fourth trimester is, they say, you know, you're still in that portal and you're still this very symbiotic relationship. So when we trust our bodies and we trust the process, we can allow ourselves to just be as intended, just learn that baby and bond with that baby and ease up on ourselves. You know, there's also this paradigm now that everything needs to be perfect and what do I need to do to be the perfect mother? But really, just like you said, our bodies are created miraculously to give birth, to create life. And I'm really passionate about seeing mothers stand in their own power and connect and really know their own children, because, you know, we see also it's still relevant for the second and third and consequent, like the other children that we have. It's not just for your first birth experience, because really every baby is different as well, just like every pregnancy is different. It's really important to listen to your baby and learn who they are.
Yeah, because you have a completely different soul. It's a completely different body. It's completely different. Each one, I'm thinking back to our four, that each one was completely different,
Yes.
and, so, gosh, but, they were all incredible. I mean, it's the feeling of being involved with it for the father too. And I just want to say for the fathers, the more you can be involved in the process, the more you feel what's going on, on a different
100%.
level.
One of the biggest questions I get is, the pregnant mother usually knows and wants to advocate for that support for herself. And then the fathers kind of are like, well, what am I going to do if you're there? And that's not at all how I work. For me, it's very, very important to coach both parents to make sure that they're both getting that solid education. So they're both participants. And it's really a peak life experience for all of them. And whether it be, just your partner or your husband, or maybe you want your sister involved or your mother or your aunt, that's really up to you. It's a really sacred, beautiful experience. Sometimes, it's about setting boundaries also, and teaching mothers how to step into motherhood and really stand for themselves as well, and bring it back to that core. This is your baby and this is your decision, and use your intuition as to what you want. I do a lot of teaching the fathers, hands on how to support. And another thing that I really like doing with them is really learning their love languages and really coaching them on how to go from being a couple and what to expect on those changes that are going to happen and becoming parents. And in learning their love languages, offering to the father ways to support his partner that really resonate with him. So if your love language are words of affirmation, but not as high on physical touch, then I'm not going to ask you to, be massaging your wife. I'm like a chameleon. I come in and I support whatever you need and however you need to be supported. But I don't do that and ask that of the fathers. I really try to empower them as well to be a participant in a way that feels authentic to them.
Yeah, 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 and it's going to be different. And I'm thinking back to some of the different things, but each one was different. But the one thing that I remember more than anything is Debbie, during the contraction, she wanted to hold on to my hands and squeeze really, really hard. And so she counted on me to be there for that, and it was meant a lot to me.
We also say, the same way that we conceive the baby is the same way that we birth the baby. So there's a lot of hormones involved, and oxytocin is that love hormone. So we want to create that intimacy as well. And we really need that partner as a participant in that. We really want to create that sacred space where it's beautiful and it's romantic. So I try to create that environment. Again, it can be in the hospital, it can be in a birth center, it can be at home, whatever you decide you feel comfortable with, but always this element of it being romantic with certain lighting and sounds and smells and affirmations that really resonate with your soul and are conducive to creating that romantic. We do a lot of breathing into each other and kissing each other, and it really gets the natural oxytocin flowing. Right. And when we do that, we don't need the artificial Pitocin.
Oh, that's a really good point.
And when we don't start that cascade of interventions, and we really create this beautiful bubble around them, it's much easier for us to stay in that alternate state of consciousness where we just allow things to happen and trust the body. When we do start with Pitocin, it really increases the chances of leading up to an epidural, which then leads up to the chances of a C-section, which makes things much more difficult in the postpartum period. So it's not that we don't appreciate when intervention is needed. Like I said, if the baby's in a wrong position and, you absolutely need a C-section.
Right.
But there's also understanding and giving ourselves really that chance to labor in a very not just natural but beautiful,
And
sacred
euphoric,
way.
euphoric even. And like it becomes a euphoric experience. And like you said, when you're euphoric, it's sort of like a runner's high. When you're a runner's high, you're producing all kinds of endorphins and other things. It's a drug, and it literally is like a high. Well, it's the same thing here. When you're creating that loving, supporting atmosphere, then it's a cascading effect in the positive way, where
Exactly.
anything that you're creating it's gonna be less painful.
Mhm.
You're gonna creating all those things, and if you start the intervention, then it's gonna cascade the other way.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really, really good thing for people to understand. You
Well,
know.
the body's also designed that it releases its own hormones. So when we allow the natural process, the body will release, like you said, endorphins and match what's going on in the body.
Mhm.
So when you have those surges and it becomes intense, we really focus on how powerful it is. And instead of closing up in fear.
Right.
And when we have an epidural or we have Pitocin or any of those interventions, it also alters the way that the body can naturally process it.
Mhm.
So it's also understanding that if we do intervene with artificial oxytocin, which is what Pitocin is, the body doesn't release at that same level its own endorphins. So
Mhm.
it really does become much more painful because the body's out of that symbiotic response.
Right. The natural response that would take place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very, very interesting, isn't it? Very.
Hmm.
Well, so do they still do like Lamaze classes? Is that something, that was what it was called a long time ago?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Like I said, there are a lot of birth options. And what I do as a birth coach and a doula is really letting you know what those options are and deciding what option that is for you. So the Bradley method is another birth educational philosophy that's father led or partner led. There's hypnobirthing, which is very maternal led, and it's you go into a self hypnosis, and it's a lot about focusing on breathing exercises,
Mhm.
and there's still Lamaze, and we're really fortunate to have a lot of different options, and it's about choosing which one you really feel will resonate for you.
So when do you recommend people come to you? When they're,
That's exactly why I recommend them come as early as possible.
Mhm.
I don't charge anything more, whether you start with me at 8 weeks or 38 weeks.
Mhm.
Um, but it really can impact how much I can coach you and how much I can support you through that pregnancy in making those right decisions for yourself. Unfortunately, I have seen a lot of times where the third trimester is really when we get physically into the body, and the mothers come back and they're like, wait, how exactly is this baby coming out of me? I've been so preoccupied with the baby. So at that point, if you haven't really discussed and opened up that conversation of how you want to give birth and what your preferences are with your provider, sometimes it's too late. Sometimes it's not. We can still there. I have had families, even in the third trimester, shift from a hospital birth, and then kind of as they're putting together their preferences, realize that they're not going to be set up for success. A lot of things we hear from doctors are, I won't let you go past 40 weeks, those types of things. Oh, your baby's too big, you won't be able to,
Right.
physiologically birth the baby. All of these kind of myths that we try to pull away from. So that's why it's good to have that from the beginning, to go through your pregnancy really in alliance with the right provider. And that could be a different OB or a midwife. And there's home birth midwives, and there's a lot of midwives also that are certified nurse midwives that work in the hospital as well. And they're also much more of that midwife relationship that's much more nurturing. They take a lot more time, a lot more holistic. So there's also that option. Sometimes it's just a matter of switching. You still might want that safety net of being in the hospital, but you want a natural, holistic childbirth. So we can go for a midwife, which was what I had, and which was kind of the best of both worlds to make everybody feel comfortable, but still maternal led.
Right.
So back to the question, I like to work with families as early as possible to really give them that education, teach them about physically how to drop into their own bodies, um, and really help them set up that birth team as well for themselves.
Mhm.
I'm a huge advocate for chiropractic care and acupuncture, prenatal yoga, prenatal massage, all of this self-care. First of all, this mentality really of mothers deserving and being worthy of taking care of themselves, because
Right.
mother is not martyrdom. If you're suffering, then your baby's going to suffer. If you're thriving, then that's going to reflect your baby also.
Right.
So it's really important to take care of yourself, not just for the emotional and mental of feeling like you have support and village, but there's a lot physically of how that impacts your pregnancy and how that impacts your labor. So, I I supported a lot of moms over the years in teaching prenatal yoga and education. And even if I wasn't their doula, they would all come back and say that just that connection in yoga to really feeling my body, like I said, knowing physiologically by tapping into what's happening in my womb, and embracing that with joy instead of fear,
Mhm.
really helps that birth experience. And they would all come back and say, I had a wonderful birth experience. My goal is never for me to be needed and relied on. To me, that's not an empowering birth. An empowering birth is my moms that wind up laboring themselves all night because they trusted their bodies, and they call me and they're like, you know what, I'm ready to go to the hospital, or I'm practically pushing by the time they call out for me. It's that trusting and listening and dropping into our bodies. And then that's really reflective when you could have that type of empowered, sacred birth experience. I see that afterwards. Those mothers really trust themselves. They trust that their babies are feeding properly. They sleep how they want to. They breastfeed how they want to. And there's really this sense of knowing, I'm everything. I'm complete and a goddess all in one, and
Yep.
perfect for my baby.
And totally confident.
Yes.
Totally confident. That's key. And I think the last thing, and then I want you to tell everybody how to get a hold of you, is that there was a notion, back when we were younger and we were having our children, that, that the mother who's pregnant should just, sit around and not do anything. And I
Hmm.
think that has been that perception has been completely proven wrong. And actually, the better shape you are in,
Yes.
the better it's going to be for you, the less pain, the stronger you're going to be, the better your birth, everything, right?
Absolutely. We can compare birth to a marathon. Like physically, it is very taxing on you. So they say, would you show up to a marathon without training? Would you show up and would you train without a coach? So
Right.
it's really that same thing. Physically, there's going to be a lot, and preparing your body, also knowing what are the movements that soothe you, what are the movements that don't resonate with you, And also, do I need, throughout that pregnancy, when you're feeling something, really knowing, well, you know what, I need to go to the chiropractor. Something's really not in alignment. It shouldn't hurt at this point. I shouldn't be feeling what I'm feeling at this point. And really putting ourselves in alignment can really make a huge difference. But I really commend my mothers in knowing that for themselves, really dropping into what they're feeling.
Mhm.
And not, I'm a fragile egg that's going to crack,
Right.
but because that leads to that mentality in childbirth of not being capable, which is completely untrue.
Right.
Your body's capable to create this baby. You're capable of continuing that process.
Right.
You don't go into labor and all of a sudden it's over. We need intervention.
Right. Exactly. Well, this has been extremely empowering, I would say, for everyone to hear and give people confidence. And I just want everybody to remember what you said is that 7 months of your coaching costs just as much as 2 months of your coaching. So,
Yes.
so that you get 7 months to get really your money's worth working with Jennifer. You want to go early, and you'll have a much better experience if you do. And
Well,
so,
exactly, because it is, again, it's like a marathon, and you want that coach to
right.
train you
Mhm.
throughout. And the longer you have of that training, sometimes, the more successful of an experience you can have.
Right.
And the other thing is also that just having me there, I'm not running that race for you. So even though I'm the birth professional and I have this wealth of knowledge and everything, it's really about having the time to pass over all of that knowledge
Right.
and for you to make those choices for yourself.
Awesome. So how do people get a hold of you?
It's Birth of a Goddess on Instagram, Facebook, my website, straight up Birth of a Goddess, and
birthofagoddess.com.
birthofagoddess.com.
Okay. Awesome. That's very good. And you're located in Delray?
I'm in South Florida. I'm in Parkland, but I cover,
Okay.
all communities. If you're about an hour away, we don't really want any further than that if I'm there supporting your labor, because, sometimes it can go faster than that.
Okay.
And the goal is to really.
Well, you cover a lot of Palm Beach County then, and Broward too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Palm Beach, Broward,
Okay.
and North Dade, I'd say.
Awesome. That's so incredible. This, I think, has been fantastic. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody listening learned a lot. And, it's going to help people have a wonderful, spiritual, deeply moving, and safe and wonderful experience. It's good for them, the parents, and also for the baby. It makes a big difference for the babies too, I think, from what I've seen, so all in all, a very, very win-win situation for everyone involved. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and good luck to everybody. And I hope you all, if you're planning a birth or you're having in the process, give Jennifer a call and get started right now. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us tonight.